Here's a
Welcome to Real Time, Real Talk, a Dexcom podcast dedicated to pharmacists and other healthcare professionals on the front lines, helping people thrive who live with diabetes.
So me being able to get an alert that it's predicting my glucose will be less than 55 in the next 20 minutes and to eat some glucose so I don't have to get as low as I could have gone if I didn't get that alert. Or even sometimes I can prevent going low because I'm able to get some glucose soon enough in my body and just go on with my day and not interrupt playing football or trying to catch baseballs with my boys. So those are just a few of the things that I love.
Dexcom is the leading developer of real-time continuous glucose monitoring, also known as RT-CGM, and other digital technologies to better manage diabetes. Real-time CGM provides critical glycemic metrics for physicians, pharmacists, and diabetes specialists to act upon to help their patients live with as much freedom as possible. Dexcom empowers people to take control of diabetes through innovative, continuous glucose monitoring. Real Time, Real Talk is a proud member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. For more information on all Dexcom's technologies, products, and services, please visit Dexcom.com. That's DEXCOM.com.
You're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. My name is Todd Urey, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and we're having a little bit of a party today because this is our third episode and things are getting so much smoother. If you're a podcaster, imagine you're podcasting for 13 years and then you decide to do something live. And live is stressful because as a podcaster, between one to another, you get time to make things sound better. Hold on. Let me take off my sunglasses. We are getting ready for an amazing show today. We're going to start out with a special guest because she's got to go pick up her kids. So listen, personal life comes first. I always say family comes first. So I can't wait to introduce our special guest. For just a second, I'm just going to shout out to Pharmacists. Thank you for joining us this week in Pharmacy. Brought to you by the U.S. Army. Please go buy a shirt. 100% of the proceeds go to U.S. veterans. Once again, usfarmy.com, usfarmy.com. Get a shirt. Go out on social media, tweet, send it out on Instagram, put it out on LinkedIn. If you tag us and we see you in your shirt, we'd like to do something. I got to come up with like a contest or something like that. But without further ado, because we got priorities, I want to introduce the one and only Jena Quinn, Dr. Quinn. She is an expert in pediatric pharmacy. She developed the vision of what is perfecting Peds. And based on her extensive background, we're going to dig into some medication management. We're going to talk a little bit about pediatric population and just her love for kids. Obviously, I think that's inside us as parents, especially mothers that are bonding with their children right from the get-go. But I want to introduce Jena to This Week in Pharmacy.
Hi, how are you, Todd? Thank you so much for having me on. I have my U.S. Army shirt as well. And I did block off the whole hour, so you can keep me as long as you like. My wonderful babysitter is going to be using my beautiful red van to pick up all the children. So rest assured.
Hey, I believe in that, though. I believe, there's a balance between our professional and our careers and our families. And I've always put my family first, even although they know that they know that dad is busy and sometimes they'll come to the studio with me. And I bought them a brand new Xbox X out in the waiting area. So they can play that sometimes and we can hang out together. But I'm just so glad you're here. I'm so proud of what you've built. I want everyone to know there's going to be in our show notes when this gets published out on our podcast. If you go to perfectingpeds.com, you actually see your website and kind of the mission of what you've built as an expert in pediatric pharmacy. And what I'm excited about today, Jena, is really a shout out to pharmacists out there that are interested in becoming specialists in something. So could you kind of give us some background on yourself? Tell us about Jena, Dr. Quinn, and tell us about inventing and launching Perfecting Peds.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself is that I, first and foremost, am a mother to three beautiful, crazy little girls, 5, 3, and 9 months. So yes, right now is definitely a balance between really getting excited and launching into the entrepreneurial space, but also being a present mom for them, which is always, a work in progress. So first off, I'm a mother, a wife, and I got interested or started in just pharmacy in general because my grandfather was a pharmacist. He was my mentor for life. I was always drawn to his personality, and we always bonded over the dorky love for both math and organic chemistry and bio. And so when I was making choices for my career, it honestly only felt natural to go in his footsteps. And so he just passed away last year, but it's been really cool because my grandmother has actually been giving me slowly all of his pharmacy stuff. So to read, he was well published in organic chemistry and had over 150 patents. So I always joke he makes me look so stupid, but he was like brilliant. And so to really get all of his stuff handed to me and be able to look at that is really nostalgic. And I'm enjoying that. Like even his resume the other day, my grandmother gave. And they're near and dear. We drive down to Maryland once a month, and we're going to go see her right after this. But then my little sister had longstanding epilepsy. And so just her being sick and us having an age gap of 10 years, I always kind of fell into like a secondary caregiver. And between my grandfather and her, I knew at the age of 17, 18, that I wanted to not only do pharmacy, but specialize in pediatrics. So fast forward through pharmacy school, I did a residency and then practiced 11 years in the PICU, NICU, Peds ER or Gen Peds setting for, I would say 10 going into 11 years. And then I saw a dire need essentially for other children outside of the hospital to have the same services and medical management by clinically trained pediatric pharmacists that these patients have traditionally only gotten, pediatric patients have really only gotten inside the hospital setting. So that's my long-winded introduction.
That's good. So you know what's interesting that I want to kind of bring up is, so when I was 18, 19 years old, I absolutely didn't know what I wanted to do. And having a mission in your heart at that early of your life, it reminds me of my sister, Teresa Uri, who is known as the Sunshine RD down in the great state of Florida.
I love it.
She's a registered dietitian, and she believes in, the world of being more holistic and more natural and more medicine, but she did know what she wanted to do at a very young age. So I think that there's something special about that of having, that vision at such a young age.
Thank you. Yeah, I was 16, so that I remember. And then by 17, because I was always a little young for my grade, by that November of senior year, I'd already applied, gotten into Rutgers pharmacy. And so, yeah, it is weird looking back now when I look at teenagers. I'm like, how did I know? But don't worry, I got all my partying in early, so I was ready to be serious in pharmacy school.
Hey, listen, you're talking to Todd Uri, who absolutely loves to party.
Yeah, so don't feel bad for me.
Responsibility and passion and mission and working and party, but that's all in my mind. That's all mixed up. I'm I'm very excited about upcoming conferences to get back to seeing people. So what conferences are you going to be attending this year?
So I actually attended one, I guess it's technically 2022, but that was the tubular sclerosis complex clinic, which was really cool. I was actually able to sponsor that. So these patients, not a lot of people are aware, but they have like micro angiofibromas all over their body. They have high incidence of epilepsy, high incidences of autism, and they have a lot of medical needs, and even I'm involved in their like maternal health leg of that alliance as well, to try to get more robust data on how these patients can safely get pregnant. So that was one, and that was the first time since COVID that I've been. And I actually brought my younger, my little baby. She was 4 months old. I'm a breastfeeding mom, and I don't do well separating. So if you see me at a conference, if my baby's not with me, she's probably somewhere around. I brought my mom just to come with me, and cool. So that was just like rolling with the punches. They asked me to sponsor, and I was like, I don't know if I have any business doing this, but I packed up my baby, and my mom came with, and we did that. So I'm hoping to get her into. I definitely want to do the ACCP. I'm helping with just like on the back end of organize some of the pediatrics stuff from their like PRN Peds group. And then I would like to and try to be as active as I can in the Pediatric Pharmacists Association as well. And to be honest, I don't want to seem like I, have always been part of organizations and advocating, because I didn't understand why people would join these organizations for a long time, not to sound like an awful human being, but I was in this bubble of hospital where we had high level of autonomy and high level of trust, and we were kind of like a well-oiled machine in the pharmacy land in the hospital, and the physicians and the nurses heavily needed us. And then I came out into the community setting doing the comprehensive management now for various settings, whether it's private pay, long-term, acute. Well, we have something called medical daycares in New Jersey. And I realized then interacting more even with the retail pharmacists in New Jersey, like, wow, our autonomy is not where I thought it was. And, I need to join organizations. I need to get involved in legislation. Like I've been back and forth with a lot of pharmacists that are in the New Jersey Board of Pharmacy Association, or just on the Board of Pharmacy, just to help lobby for some changes that I'm seeing. So I just recently, it took me 11 years post-grad to really get into advocacy and linking arms with my fellow pharmacists, because I didn't really see the need before I came out of the hospital, to be honest.
And what I want to ask before we run out of time, we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there's a pharmacist out there listening that is interested in becoming a specialist and really drilling down into specific conditions that are impacting children. And on top of that, assuring that the parents of these children know what's going on and can resource their pharmacist, which so many of our 330 million Americans out there just don't realize what pharmacists are capable of from the plethora of information as the medication expert. So as someone's listening, what are the first steps? Let's pretend I'm a chain pharmacist. I've been in chain for 10 years. I want to transition specifically into pediatrics, and I don't necessarily want to go the route of hospital system, which that's kind of a no-duh movement that you move
right
to neonatal and into taking care of kids. But let's talk about the public health facing pediatric focused pharmacist, either consultancy or working with other pediatricians. Tell us about that. How do we get into that field?
Yeah, you know what? It's a non-existent, to be honest. And that's my personal goal of perfecting Peds, is not only to empower, to get better information to providers, better information out to parents, for everybody that is medically complex, to have that clinical pharmacist link arms with them and have them at their disposal. But also to create more pediatric trained pharmacists is 100% my goal. And so, of course you can do, like you're saying, you have your residency, you also have board certification. I do love the board certification that BCP even I myself, it just keeps me accountable to staying up to date on the literature. But also, as you know, you and I are involved in RPH Ally, and that's just one of the many ways that a pharmacist, I love it. It's kind of like LinkedIn just for pharmacists, and really for pharmacists who, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, but pharmacists who want to link arms and do advocacy, who want to specialize, who want to start their own business or just grow their knowledge. So if you specifically were interested in that, RPH Ally, we have a 1 year where you can just buy in for 1 year. And my partner and I just post a plethora of different things, like the hot topic right now that I just jumped on and did a live with Kevin Walker about was, how as pharmacists do we navigate these really scary pediatric drug shortages? We have Tylenol, we have amoxicillin, Augmentin, Cefdinir, and Tamiflu suspensions all on back order. And, and you show up to the CVS retail window and they're like, we don't have it. And I know my 9-month-old and my 3-year-old, I've showed up and they said, oh, sorry, Mrs. Quinn, we'll order it for tomorrow. We'll order it in. It'll probably be tomorrow, the next day. And that's not an okay answer. And so, that avenue is a great it's a great way to educate other pharmacists on certain specialties and also provide that advocacy and support that we all need as pharmacists. So I really do love that. And shout out to Sean, who is an amazing leader of our entire group. But yes, it's scary what's happening right now.
We just made the national news. North Carolina medicine shelves to remain empty. Tylenol restocking still up in the air.
Yeah, and a lot of kids, like if you think of a kid that has like a past medical history of like a gastric bleed or a stomach bleed, or a kid that has kidney disease, or a kid that's 6 months or younger, the age of 6 months, they can't use ibuprofen, so they need Tylenol. And so Kevin and I were talking, like, you got to get creative. You got to use suppositories. You have to use chewable tablets. You can make doses from a half a tablet and crush it. You can make it from a regular tablet and crush it and put it in pureed food. And I think it's, again, the job of pharmacists in the retail space. The community pharmacists have the most access to the patient. So I think empowering them with this knowledge is definitely one of my 3 big visions of perfecting Peds in this company, is to empower as many pharmacists as possible to be comfortable answering the pediatric and actually also maternal health questions that a lot of them tend to shy away from, because it is uncomfortable when you're dealing with a fetus and a mom that's pregnant or a child who's very tiny and they're not little adults. So that's 100% one of the arms of my business that I really hope to expand and grow and help other pharmacists.
So I want to share something that was out in the news, and I want your comments on it. But just 1 second.
Indonesia court hears lawsuit filed against pharmacies after 200 children die from tainted cough syrup. Families of Indonesian children who died because of tainted cough syrup demanded restitution as an Indonesian court on Tuesday started hearing their class action lawsuit against pharmaceutical firms and government agencies. About 200 children have died of acute kidney injury in Indonesia since last year, and authorities have said 2 ingredients, ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol, found in some syrup-based paracetamol medications, are linked to the illness. The 2 ingredients are used in antifreeze, brake fluids, and other industrial applications, but also as a cheaper alternative in some pharmaceutical products to glycerin, a solvent or thickening agent in many cough syrups. They can be toxic and can lead to acute kidney injury.
I mean, Jena, we don't ever want to see this happen. And we know that the healthcare professionals, the pharmacists, the doctors that are in Indonesia, they did not intend that obviously to happen. But that is what that's like a parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah. And I think too, like I get like part of my, I always joke that I have like 30 years till I retire. And like one of my big goals is like get parents educated on over the counter. Like I actually don't know why we offer pediatric cough and cold meds. If you ever ask like a pediatrician or a pediatric pharmacist their thoughts on cough and cold, I'm like, no, your child does not need it. Give them some water, thin those secretions, and they will come out. No, I have not. There's an exception of like, you know, one that has honey in it, but I'll just say if they're over the age of 2, give them honey. That will stop their cough. But cough and cold medicine is not safe in the pediatric population. And I don't like it. And I hate that they market towards it. You know, I think we have a level up in fact that we have some regulatory things obviously regulatory government agencies in place that do monitor all those things. But we know over the counters are less monitored than we would if we have like an FDA approved drug that's, you know, in the pharmacy. But that being said, those excipients, something called polyethylene glycol or benzoyl peroxide are excipients that exist, which is the inactive ingredient. So like I say these dorky things and I forget I have to break them down. So the inactive ingredient in these medications can be toxic to children, and especially they can be toxic to children if they're little. And so we know it can cause in neonates something called neonatal gasping syndrome, which is fatal. And then we also know that it can accumulate, those glycols can accumulate in renal injury and cause further renal damage or kidney damage. So I think it's just so important because how different pediatrics is that we arm as many pharmacists as possible with that knowledge. And so I think, you know, knowing your drug references is like, you know, pharmacy 101, but it can't stress the importance of, they will list if a medication has those toxic ingredients in it that aren't necessarily toxic to you or I, but if I'm a small newborn baby, or even further, if I'm a baby that's premature, they cannot have those inactive ingredients, or they will get what we call neonatal gasping syndrome. They can 100% get kidney injury depending on what the inactive ingredient is. So I believe it because we even have not those two that were quoted, but we do have inactive ingredients that tiny children cannot have.
So I want to let the listeners know, and I'm excited about this. You're joining the Pharmacist Review podcast, and you're going to help build out that content. Dr. Alison Chung helped us launch that podcast. And I just want to give a shout out to other pharmacists listening. This network is about you. It is about pharmacists advancing and innovating pharmacy care. So Dr. Chung kicked it off, but now Dr. Quinn is going to participate and help grow out a very specific content that is backed by evidence-based study, journal reviews, things that you want to bring up. It's going to be driven by you and Dr. Chung. So just give us some highlights. What are some of the topics you're thinking of bringing to the PPN?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about this. But I think just something like over-the-counter medications, like something that, you know, that basic, you know, how do you approach a child versus an adult? But also I was listening this morning to, there's like a kids list now, which is super exciting. I feel like it's growing. The pharmacist that I'm in Jersey made it, but it's kind of like the Beers list in geriatrics, so medications to avoid in peds. I think, you know, through this we can have more pharmacists comfortable with like the basic diseases that you're going to see, which are like ear infections, pneumonia, asthma, and I do want to also bring innovative stuff like the use of, you know, cannabidiol and CBD in pediatric patients. And a big thing that I am very interested in is, you know, behavioral med, because I personally struggled from the age of 15. So I would want to get those topics talked about. We have a lot of parents who struggle with behaviors of their children. And so autism has always been something that I've always loved, ADHD. And so especially now coming out of COVID, my dad is a principal and retiring. I was just telling Todd before we started, he's going to join my team as of as a technician, which is awesome. But he said like what he's seeing in children right now in his 36 years of being in the education field, he's never seen, like just their mental health. So things like that you can really empowering the pharmacists with knowledge, empowering parents with knowledge, so that when they go in to the pediatrician, they feel like they can ask that question, that extra question, and not feel like quote unquote stupid. Because really, not only do I want to help educate pharmacists, I want to help give pediatricians even more pediatric medicine knowledge, and then also those parents, because parents really want to do what's best for their children, and so they can do it through being empowered with more reliable, I should say, not like all the stuff that's like, on social media that like these groups are run by some interesting people, but so get reliable resources and information.
Well, I do want to give a shout out to our favorite hashtag out on Twitter, TWIRx. If you want to filter the bull crap, and you want to just listen to what pharmacists professionals have to say, that is an amazing hashtag that's been around for years, and it really filters down to conversations and discussions specifically driven by pharmacists. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, by the way, what is your favorite social media platform? I think you're more of an Instagram.
I am. I did Instagram. I do like Instagram because I like their reels. I think they're fun to do. But then I do love LinkedIn too, because, I honestly, last year I had, of course, come here, Todd, real life, right? So one of them found me. I knew one of them was going to find me.
I love it.
So this is Hadley, but I can't hide from them. So, but I also love LinkedIn too, because up until last year, I actually only, oddly enough, had like 20 followers. And then I started using it, and I get a lot of really rewarding messages to me selfishly, like, that post resonated so well with me, or, what, I see what you're doing, you're a mom of 3, like, I'm going to start my business. And so, being other people's cheerleaders on LinkedIn and providing that kind of value to me is selfishly rewarding to me. And I'm enjoying that component of it too.
That is awesome. Thanks for joining the show. Do you want to see my bird?
Good.
This is our Twitter, our expert.
Look how cool. She's like, Mom.
They like our dynamics at this age. It's like when they're teenagers, they'll roll their eyes and be like, whatever.
Well, it was the true story right before we get off. It was a few days ago, and I was just wearing this like crummy T-shirt. It wasn't your U.S. Pharmacy shirt. So let's be clear. But my 5-year-old said, "You're not gonna like drop me off in that, are you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's begun! Like it's begun."
Shut down by your child because you are not cool enough.
No, and I'll never be. But that's okay.
That is so funny. So. Got to have you back on This Week in Pharmacy when we start to gather steam and start to really feature some treatments, some medications, clinical trials, collaboration with physicians, pediatricians, specialists. I'd like to have some treatment discussions on live with patients in our studio. We have several people in my specific community that have children, even one having a rare disease, and it would be an opportunity for us to dialogue and talk. But it has.
I would love that.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a joy to have you here. I want you to not only come back here, but we can't wait to listen to a new episode of the Pediatric Pharmacist Review. So, but thank you so much for being here, Dr. Jena Quinn. And once again, just to let everybody know, you can go to Jena's website. It is called perfectingpeds.com. Once again, that's perfectingpeds.com. Dr. Jena Quinn, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Jena, have a great weekend. And
thank you. You too.
Send us a picture of you in that shirt too, with your kid and with your baby.
I will. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. And I'm excited to work with you, Todd.
Me too.
Take care, guys.
All right. So I want to talk to you about some more news, and this bothers me. So I do want to bring this up, and let me see. I will.
Rural Pennsylvanians stranded by healthcare giants insurer UPMC and its new pharmacy benefit manager Express Scripts are squeezing local independent pharmacies, with residents caught in the crossfire. In an overnight purge, UPMC, the third largest insurer in the state and the most powerful hospital network, dropped over 1,200 pharmacies from its health plan. When the Pennsylvania Pharmacists Association tried contacting UPMC for clarification on why certain local pharmacies were kicked off and not others, Pat Lavella, the president of PPA, ran into an all-too-familiar case of corporate blame game. Express Scripts told us UPMC made the decision, then we called UPMC and they said, well, you'd better call Express Scripts. They issued the letter, said Lavella.
This bothers me. Now listen to me. I am a Pittsburgher. I'm proud to be a Pittsburgher. And I love UPMC as a health system. They're a very strong health system. They're run by some amazing people. They're heroes of mine. They're pharmacy divisions, heroes of mine. But this, I know that there's contracting. I know that there's struggles. I know that there's bureaucracy, but we have got to start really paying attention to meeting patients where they are. Patients are in their communities. Lots of patients rely on their community independent pharmacy specifically for not only their care, but their history of what their family is going through. And when you expect UPMC to pick this up and kick it out to a mail order or to something that doesn't involve the community pharmacy, it literally rocks that chronic patient that needs that specific help and that specific knowledge with their specific independent community pharmacy. I'm going to get off that soapbox, but it's just a shout out to UPMC. We appreciate you. We like the organization. We like what you're doing for our community here in the greater Pittsburgh, but do not shut out independent community pharmacy. And I think we'll have a show on that at some other point, but I just want to make that point. And before we get on to our next special guest, don't forget to support your local community pharmacies, local pharmacy in general. There's just a quality difference than expecting your mailman or your mail lady or your mail person to deliver your medications and not have that personal touch with a clinician who really understands what you are going through. I'm excited. So I met our next guest organization. I have not met who we're going to be interviewing next, which is going to be Chris Blackley. He is the CEO and co-founder of Prescryptive Health. But I have met several times the team at Prescryptive Health at several conferences, and I've been excited to talk with them and to review the platform that they have built specifically for pharmacists, because of the fact that they're really allowing independent community pharmacies to really grow their business with the additional services that they're going to provide and empower community pharmacies to tap into clinical plans and treatment plans, as well as integration and other things that they're doing with physicians and physician groups. The MyRx Pro, a powerful platform to control your schedule. It's HIPAA compliant. We're going to really get into this right now, but I do want to welcome to This Week in Pharmacy, the one and only Chris Blackley, CEO and founder of Prescryptive Health. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Todd. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
So no pressure. It's live. So if you say something stupid or if you make your embarrassment, then it's your fault. So I just wanted to get that out of the way.
I appreciate that. I'm confident there's a good possibility I might say something that I regret, but I'll try not to.
So your compliancy team and the company legal is like, wait, Chris is going what? And they're like live and nobody knows. And then here you are. But I just said at the beginning of the show, I've been a podcaster for 14 years now. It'll be 14 years, March 2nd. And live for me, even though, I present all the time, that's stressful. I down deep inside, I don't like it, but we're moving with the times. So that's why we're doing it.
Well, I've got to tell you, nobody told me this was live. I did a podcast a couple of months ago, and it was not live, and I was glad. I was glad for that. Nobody gave me that warning this time, so who knows what could happen.
It was a surprise. I know. If you want to get up and dance because it's Pharmacy Friday, you're more than welcome to. We actually danced before you actually came on, but you missed out on the party part. But that's all right. I do want to get into some questions with you, because I'm really interested in this platform. I've met up with your prescriptive team, such professional people that really believe in empowering pharmacists and the evolution of our pharmacist role in healthcare. And this platform does exactly that. It's infrastructure, but it's what I like about the system, because I saw a demo on it when I was at HLTH, is the fact that it allows pharmacists to work on their workflow and their decisions, and kind of use prescriptive as a booster of those treatment programs and about that consultancy. Give our listeners just an overview of what is prescriptive.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the chance to talk about it, Todd. But I think it's important when talking about what is prescriptive, give a little bit of perspective on philosophy. I've been in this space for over 20 years. I spent some time on it back in the early 2000s, and what captured me, or captured my passion for pharmacy is. I'm a technologist. I'm not a pharmacist. So folks who I've not had a chance to meet, I'm not a pharmacist, but I've learned a lot from pharmacists. And I had a pharmacist tell me, when I was providing technology to pharmacies back in 99, 2000, that told me that when you send a pharmacist on the rounds with a physician in a hospital, there's a material, I don't remember the number, but it blew me away. It was a huge number. The mortality rate in a hospital drops dramatically when you send the pharmacist with them. And I don't know why, but that stuck with me. And then over the course of a couple of years, I spent more and more time with pharmacists, and I started going to my pharmacists and talking to my pharmacist friends more than I talked to my primary care physician. That's where I started going for healthcare. Yeah. And I would say and it's really been reinforced since we started prescriptive in 2017. There's a personality, I think, that is attracted to pharmacy. And you talk to pharmacists that are, second generation, third generation, I know fourth generation pharmacists. There's a connection, there's a caring there that exists, and then there's also the fact that they're a small business owner. So they're providing healthcare, they're connecting with their patients, and they're running a small business. And my dad ran a small business, and I know how hard that is. And I think people who have never done that can't appreciate how hard it is to run a small business. And so there's a personality profile, I think, that attracts pharmacists to the profession, where they care about people. And so when you look at the challenges that pharmacies are struggling with today to run a business and to survive and to provide care in their local communities, that's a huge part of who prescriptive is. And so that has nothing to do with technology or the platform, but it is part of our DNA. And so then you look at the industry, and you look at the practice of pharmacy and the profession. It's going through a lot of change. Financially, it's challenging. You just talked about UPMC and what's happening there. That's just one of many things that are making it hard. And the way the profession and the economy for pharmacy is developed over the last 20 years. And so when we look at how can you use technology to help pharmacy and help pharmacists and help their patients, that transition of moving from purely focusing on dispensing medications and helping the pharmacist practice at the top of their license and provide care and clinical services is really important. Not just because it's effective and it's good for healthcare, but it's also necessary for pharmacists as small business owners to help make that transition.
So give me an example of how you'd enter into the workflow of a community pharmacy who's using a pharmacy management system, who has abilities to build APIs in and out for workflow management. But give our listeners kind of the down and dirty of what the application is doing. Is it, by the way, is it cloud-based? Is it premise-based, or how's it work?
Yeah, no, it's 100% cloud-based. We don't charge access fees or anything like that. And so it's cloud-based. It's very easy. Candidly, we're working to provide more and more integration into the core pharmacy management system, because we're not trying to replace the pharmacy management system that they have today. So integration is important. We're trying to add to what they're doing from a business perspective and extend their reach into clinical services, provide all the payment services, and make sure that payments happening. So we're early in the integration piece, and so it's separate and apart from the pharmacy's PMS system that they're using for dispensing, and we're getting better at that and continue to do more. And candidly, pharmacies can help us with that by saying, "Hey, we want this," and so that helps us work with their partner that they're working with on the pharmacy management system side. I think a unique thing for us that we're trying to push and we're seeing success with is we're extending the pharmacy out into the consumer. So one of our core tenets as a company is empowering the patient. We think that if you empower the patient at the point of care when they're talking to the doctor with information and choice, when they show up at the pharmacy, all the barriers to access to the medication and what they need at the pharmacy can be solved before they show up at the counter. The administration of the pharmacy benefit manager and the benefit plan all lands on the pharmacist and the patient, and it breaks down when they show up at the counter. And so that connection to the patient through their mobile phone before they get out of the doctor's office, the ability to then find the pharmacy, get an appointment made for a clinical service, get it scheduled, get them to the pharmacy, and then get the pharmacist paid is really what it's all about. So we're really focused on that interaction between pharmacist as provider and patient before they leave the doctor's office, and that workflow for the pharmacy and making that super, super simple versus, focusing on the dispensing workflow. And so seeing those two things work together, but we're not going after the other. We're going after how do you get the patient into the pharmacy, get it booked, get the patient to the pharmacy, and get the pharmacist paid for the service.
So Chris, where is the connection? How do we connect pharmacists and patients through Prescryptive?
They're inextricably linked together in the technology. When we built the platform, we started with the premise that it's patient first, and every interaction, every transaction is contemplating how do you engage the patient through their patient journey. And so when they get an electronic prescription, when there's a claim for payment, all of that is used to trigger via a text message to the patient to get them to engage, get them information. With the right integration, we could do things like, hey, if the pharmacy is out of stock on a product, let's schedule for you to pick it up tomorrow when they'll have it. So everything is fully integrated with the consumer experience on the mobile device. When we started in 2017, people thought we were crazy for believing that patients would use their mobile phone for healthcare. You jump through a pandemic, and now it's kind of a foregone conclusion. Yeah. And so we're trying to, and one of the things that's really important on this is that we did a research study, hired a third party, and I think somewhere north of 80% of patients said that the predominant consideration for them in picking a pharmacy was convenience. But historically, convenience was determined by your location. So if your consumer patient is choosing your pharmacy because of location, there's not a whole lot you can do beyond physical location to attract your patients and customers into your store. That's not true now with technology. You can deliver convenience independent of location through technology, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that convenience of the pharmacy and the patient engagement to the consumer through their mobile device, and then get them into the store. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and the scheduler seems to be, that path between the patient and the pharmacist for scheduling. And then as I read through the website, there's other features that are prescription shopping, and then of course it says fewer doctors visits, which ties back to the fact that people are seeing their pharmacist 9 times more.
Yes.
They are their primary care. And just as a shout out, if you are a DO, if you are a physician, if you are someone in academia, we're not trying to change the roles between pharmacists and physicians. We are trying to just empower the physicians' roles and be able to empower them through the pharmacy sector and through what pharmacists do through medication management and medication safety. And I've never taken a stand where I'm wanting the pharmacist to eclipse the physician. I always say football. I love football, Chris. I'm not sure if you do. It's the playoffs, by the way, so this is relevant. I'm a Bills fan now. Now that the Steelers are knocked out, I'm a Bills fan. What about you? Who are you voting for?
I'm not at all aware of what's happening with the playoffs.
So in football, I look at the physician as our quarterback, and then they're passing the treatment plan to their running back, to their tight end, to their wide receiver. And then they're using the talents of those players to run the treatment and to go to the treatment. But along the way, we know that pharmacists have to juke and sometimes have to make changes because it's medication safety of all of that defense, all of that adversity, all of that obstacles coming at the treatment plan and driving that treatment plan to the goal. We have to allow a wide receiver or a tight end to do what they're best at doing. We have to allow the medication expert to do what they're doing. And, you know, what I like about Prescryptive above and beyond the technology is the fact that you understand the obstacle between good pharmacy care has a component in it, which is the world of the PBM. And I want to kind of dig into your insights regarding reform. And also regarding, you know, a question that I have for you is, you know, are you anticipating that House and Senate to pass regulations on PBMs, a little stronger PBM regulation in 2023?
I absolutely do. And I can tell you part of the reason I'm confident in that is because I was in DC earlier this week. I was there earlier in the year and earlier in the month, and I was there in November. And I'm going back and I'm sitting down and I'm talking directly with the Senate offices and staff of the folks who are writing the legislation. There's and this is different. I think it's important to understand that there's a material shift in the level of interest. When I was talking with regulators and legislators at state and federal level 3-4 years ago, there was relatively little interest. And I don't think it was because they weren't interested in the problem. It was because they didn't understand it and the complexity. This is a very difficult industry to understand. And that takes time to understand. And time is challenging. So what's different is they're hiring staff and they're focused on spending time and they're committed to doing something. And if education is what's needed and they're taking the time to get educated. And when you understand what's happening, nobody with any sort of compassion and understanding of the importance of the pharmacist's role in care will do nothing. It's just impossible. And so I know because of the conversations I'm having personally, firsthand, to help educate them and help them understand what are the levers to pull in order to have a material impact. Because honestly, I think a lot of what's happened in the past around legislation has been nipping at the edges and not going at the core of the problem.
Yeah, and I am not anti-PBM. I am anti-status quo PBM. And so I've worked with a guy who was a rock star, and his sons are still in healthcare. His name was Dom Meff Sr. He was from Greensburg, Pennsylvania. God bless his soul. I learned so much from Dom. His son, Dom Meff Jr., is in the specialty market. And Dom Sr. really taught me about different aspects of PBMs and the way that they were. And his description of PBMs in the 80s and 90s was exactly what PBMs were supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Assisting and accelerating and helping manage formularies and just demystifying the insurance aspect. And it was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, someone smelled the blood or someone smelled the money, and the eyes rolled back in the heads of these stockbrokers in Wall Street, and they started saying, wow, there's an algorithm that we could build, and it's completely been taken over, much heavier leaning towards money and profit and steering, and has nothing to do with pharmacy care. And so now it's time to I don't hate PBMs. It's time to shift the pendulum. It's time to bring the pendulum back to the middle, and in my opinion, a little bit more to the other side, where pharmacists, physicians, and patients are collectively making the decisions about how to spend their pharmacy benefits. So
that's absolutely right. When PBMs figured out, and I know who it was, and I've spoken with them personally, figured out.
Can you tell us? All right, tell me that.
We should have a beer sometime. But when they figured out that they can make more money on arbitraging the market on drugs than they could selling technology, they changed their business model, and that's fundamentally what happened. But I'll be honest with you, this is not a situation where the house can be remodeled and you're going to transform PBMs into something different than what they are. They're rotten to the core, and the house has to be raised and remodeled and rebuilt from scratch. You're not, the financial incentives are too great. You're not going to incent people to transform and go after something different. The money is too big, and it's, PBM stands for perfect business model. There's a reason for that.
It's frustrating, but organizations like you who are showing that pharmacist roles that are advancing and changing, and you're empowering them through the technology that you're providing, it means that you are literally in the trenches with us all. So that's why I've always enjoyed Prescryptive. I learned about you through a PR agency that works with you. A shout out to them, and just bringing them to the forefront. And then I started stalking your guys out on the Twitter sphere, as well as some of the conferences that you're attending. Speaking of conferences, what's the next conference that we could shout out to our listeners so that they know to meet up with the Prescryptive team?
Well, I know that we're at the American Pharmacists Association's events. I know that we're at the NCPA events. We're at a lot of the local, state level conferences and events. We sponsor many of them, trying to get as much lift as we can for the organizations themselves. And so I think there's probably just about any of them that you could identify that we're engaged in. We're trying to do everything that we can in that regard to help be a voice for the role of the pharmacist. They're within a few miles of everybody in the country, and they're exceptionally educated, and they care. They absolutely care. So that's part of what we're trying to do.
For our listeners that aren't watching us live, but you're listening to this as a podcast later, you can go to prescryptive.com. That's PRESCRYPTIVE. Some interesting and very creative marketing there with the name. I love it. Always, if you go to the conferences, look for the purple booth. It's a gorgeous purple booth with people in the booth that every time I walk up, there's smiles, there's excitement. I like that, Chris. I can't stand walking up to a booth and looking at a bunch of people that look like they're bored to be there. I want to meet with people that are innovating healthcare, but more importantly, really empowering our pharmacists. So I want to let you know, I've been in pharmacy now since 2004, long enough to have a pulpit to say this, but your crew is extremely professional, and I'm always impressed.
I appreciate that. That's the best thing I've heard today. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we got to have you back. I want to break this down for our listeners. This is more, like I said, we surprised you. Thank you so much for moving with the punches of going live, but you did an amazing job. But I do want to have Prescryptive back, really starting to show where the technology amplifies, let's say, a specific chronic condition, and how a bucket of patients that are out there are more keen to really paying attention to their scheduling and being a little bit more in tune, knowing that their health, it could change within a month if they're not on top of it. And pharmacists can be there to catch those patients and assure the safety. So, but Chris, you are a rock star. Can't wait to meet you in person. I'm going to be at the APHA, by the way. We're going to talk about our conference leg next, and what conferences we're going to go to. But let's make sure that you get to the APHA booth. We're going to be embedded with the American Pharmacists Association. So please come over and say hi.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd. Really appreciate it. And happy to join anytime. If we can go deeper on anything, let me know.
Absolutely. Chris with Prescryptive, thanks for being here on This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you, Todd.
All right. I do want to talk conferences before we wrap up the This Week in Pharmacy show today. I also want to ask you, you're watching the show right now. I want this to be, when you watch This Week in Pharmacy 3 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, I want this show to evolve. So I want you to use hashtag TWIRx, give us a shout out on Twitter, tag at Pharmacy Podcast to let us know that you're talking with us, and give us some updates. What would you like to see on a weekly program that can continue to drive the value of pharmacists as well as information for you? We're going to do a little bit of news. We want to talk about conferences that we're going to be at in order to network with you. But I want to know the pharmacists that are in the trenches. What would a weekly news program, what would you get most out of that weekly news program? And the contributions are going to come from you, which are the listeners. So if you want to be part of This Week in Pharmacy, you can go to our website. You can go to our Twitter, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, find a link, email me. I'll send you a scheduler so that you can actually get on. But let's talk about conferences. The first conference that we're going to be at is going to be the HITMIC conference. And this is the Health Information Technology Marketing Conference. This is an amazing group of people that have been around now for 10 years. A shout out to Colin Hung, who helped to start this organization. This is the Health Information Technology Marketing Conference. It's all about marketing, and it's really more about the innovation of communications and marketing. And I'm going to be attending this for the very first time. The Pharmacy Podcast Network received the Podcast of a Year award from HITMIC. So we were honored to be featured by Colin Hung. Here he is right here, his handsome face, and his team. And I want to give a shout out to Gil Bash with Finn Partners, to Grace Vinton, who's one of my buddies, and we meet up at conferences all the time. They're going to also be speaking. And then the one and only myself, I'm going to be speaking on podcasting. What do you know? It's a great subject to be speaking on. But I really want to talk about podcasting with a purpose. I do not like people launching podcasts just to bandwagon, especially in the business of healthcare. And I think that podcasting should be secondary and should be amplifying and should be supportive to a primary theme or a primary group of information. So I'm going to talk about that with you. I'm going to challenge podcasters in healthcare to level up and to assure that the content that they put out is very supportive to something primary and to amplify our healthcare providers. And, you know, I'm never going to stop amplifying pharmacists. The next conference that we're going to, so HITMIC is going to be the 1st of February. So if you're in Vegas, if you want to go to this conference, we're going to be tweeting about it, Instagram and LinkedIn about it. That's going to be on the 1st of February. Then on the 17th of February, we are going to the one and only TWIRx conference. A shout out to Pharmacy 50, most influential people in pharmacy, Lisa Fast, who actually launched TWIRx 5, 6, 7 years ago. I can't remember. Time's going by too fast. But this is a conference designed for pharmacy owners and really helping you to navigate and to invest in technologies, processes, programs that other pharmacy owners have vetted so that you don't have to buy anything that's not going to work for you or it's not right for you, because you really get to listen to presenters at this conference that know what they're doing as pharmacy owners. One pharmacy owner might have success in a program that another pharmacy owner won't, but I guarantee you, if you go to DiversifyRx, you will come out of that conference with something that is going to set your mind on fire, that's going to be good use of healthcare, good use of technology, good use of your time as a pharmacy owner in your community. And that's what's most important, is going to these conferences. These conferences are supposed to be teaching opportunities. And this one, DiversifyRx, is all about teaching you as a pharmacy owner what you should be paying attention to in leveraging the next thing to help your pharmacy business, whether that's better accounting, whether that's better technology or a platform or a program or something like Happier at Home, which works with Pharmacy Podcast Network. A shout out to Debbie and her team. Happier at Home is that franchise model, which it enhances and brings in cash-based money, cash-based revenue to your community pharmacy so that you can deliver more home care services to your people that can't leave their homes. And then the mothership, the one and only, the APHA 2023, the annual meeting and exposition in Phoenix, Arizona. If you want to meet up with the Pharmacy Podcast team, we're having the entire team, whole team there, whole team. I know there's a whole team song that I would like to play right now, but I think with rights of songs, we can't play what I want. But the whole team for PPN will be there. And we're going to have Brady and Kevin and Rachel and myself. We are the media sponsors and media support for the APHA 2023. We will be in the APHA's main booth, so please come meet up with us. We're going to be talking about many different things that are supportive to the APHA and the fact that we are helping them to run Locked on Pharmacy. It's been exciting. This show has been packed. I can't believe how fast an hour goes by, but we are actually coming to the end of our show. Once again, shout out to pharmacists, shout out to pharmacy technicians, the right hand of our pharmacists. If there's anything that Pharmacy Podcast Network can do for you, please let us know. You can always find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We're even on TikTok. We don't do a good job on TikTok, but we are learning. And really, that's it. That's the end of our show today. We thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Like I said, if you're listening to us on podcast, on any of your favorite platforms, please subscribe to the Pharmacy Podcast Network and support us. By the way, go get your US Pharmy shirt, uspharmy.com. Once again, that's uspharmy, PHARMY.com. And we cannot wait to spend time with you next week in pharmacy and talking more about what's going to be happening in our industry. Next week, we're going to be talking about clinical trials and the evolution of clinical trials and community pharmacy. Wait until you hear our guests that we have lined up for you. It's going to blow you away because you have got to pay attention to clinical trials and how community pharmacy will be impacted by that and the business opportunity in that as well. And with that, I say peace. I love you, pharmacists. I love what you do. My favorite providers. We can't wait to see you next time.